Do you have to speak Swedish to live in Sweden? After all, people in Sweden are really good at speaking English. Sweden ranks number 4 in the EF Proficiency Index. That's a global ranking of countries depending on how well they speak English. So you might say, why should I even bother? As a tourist, it's definitely not an issue. You will get along anywhere in the country with only English. And even on the job market, there are many jobs that require only English. Sometimes you can even see people in the service industry, like in the bar, for example. The barkeeper doesn't really speak Swedish or just a couple of words and relies mostly on English. Now, of course, to be honest, this phenomenon is closely linked to the economic situation. So in the moment there is an economic crisis, if you want to get a job in the service industry, it will become much more difficult without Swedish knowledge, because when employers have the choice between a candidate who speaks only English and another candidate who also speaks Swedish, they will go for the candidate who also speaks Swedish, which is quite logical. But even in the jobs where only English is required, you have a big advantage if you speak Swedish, because it's considered a little bit of a soft skill in Sweden. So, for example, in a company that does IT and everything is in English, but then the Swedish employees will still speak Swedish in the lunch break or the coffee break. So the team building basically might still happen in Swedish. And Swedish employers are very keen on building a good team that works together very closely. And for that reason, it's considered a big advantage to speak Swedish, even when it's not a formal requirement on the job. On top of it, people think that you're a bit serious about your life in Sweden. So if it's the first time you come to Sweden and you don't speak Swedish, then employers might have this idea, maybe in the winter it's too cold and she's going to move somewhere to Southern Europe. When you can show that you have learned Swedish, they know, okay, you want to stay for a longer while, maybe forever, and you just give a bit of a more serious impression. So even though the job might not require formally any Swedish, you have an advantage if you do speak Swedish. And there are also other aspects of life. Of course, if you don't speak Swedish at all, you're always confined to this expat bubble. So you won't most likely make friends who are also not from the country, which is fine. I mean, why not? But why would you deprive yourself from all the possibilities you have when you do speak the Swedish language? Like everyday leisure activities. You want to join a sports club, but the conversations happen in Swedish. Or you want to take part in the culture. You want to read, listen to the radio, understand political discussions, understand what's in the public discourse. What do people care about? At parties, yes, of course, people will switch to English in order to talk to you, but then the general conversations will happen in Swedish. So why would you want to deprive yourself of all of these experiences? Me personally, I always get annoyed even when I'm traveling to a country as a tourist and I don't understand the language. I feel like I'm cut off from everything that's going on. Of course, I'm not going to learn a language just for traveling to a country for 2-3 weeks, but if you want to live in Sweden, then I think it's definitely worth learning the Swedish language. You might say, of course, Naja, I understand, Anna has this Swedish course, he wants to sell it, and yes, of course I want to sell my Swedish course, but well, now that we're already talking about it, you might want to check it out. There is a link in the description. It's a course that's based on an absurd story for you to be more fun and more motivating to learn Swedish. But anyway, I recommend you learning Swedish regardless of whether you buy my course. Feel free to go to my competitors and feel free to check out the free resources on this YouTube channel for learning Swedish, for example.